Hi, Modupe, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, thank you. I loved the show, and so I
Hey.
just wanted to get started with like you. I think you're in the first episode, and that's the first episode where it felt like this guy that we've seen as the god of thunder for so long. He really felt human, and when you see him react to that stress after you're doing the pool exercise, is that sort of a natural reaction that you see from even this guy who's like the most, the ultimate sort of human guy?
I mean, here's the thing about stress that it we all experience it in some way or another. And so to see somebody who is that physical, that agile, also deal with stress is a reminder that we're all human. We're all human. And I think that we need to tap into and realize our humanity when we think about stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think I noticed something in your initial conversation with him. When he's talking about the stress he's facing, a lot of it wasn't unrelatable stuff. Like you would think he would talk about being a movie star, or he was talking about like, just being a father, being a husband, being a son. And it's like, what's the sort of difference that you've seen between this personal life stress versus the work stress?
That we all face very similar personal life stressors. And so that's the idea of being human, is that we have some kind, most people have some kind of family, people we love that are going to affect us in particular ways. And then also have our things in our job that are going to affect us in particular ways. And the best way to actually think about stress is when you think about it as life is too demanding and the things you're experiencing are too demanding. And what's demanding? There's some danger, uncertainty, or some effort associated with it. So uncertainty, you don't know if your kids are going to act crazy one day at a restaurant and people are filming you. Effort, like you need to put effort into every relationship you have if you want it to be a flourishing relationship. If those are three of the ingredients to stress, then you could see that play a role at work too. There's danger about, like, am I going to do well here? Uncertainty about, am I going to do well? Am I going to get promoted? Effort, you're working really hard, late nights, the phone is always available. So the same ingredients play a role in many of the things that cause us stress, which means that we need to figure out how to kind of give ourselves what we need to overcome those ingredients and to overcome those demands.
Yeah, so and you spend a couple episodes or a couple days preparing him for the walk. And have you sort of know, because even when he still does it, he is still stressed, but he has the techniques to help him face the stress versus where he's not just walking in blind. Like,
Right.
so when like, when we're on a daily basis, we can't always prepare for every stressful situation. But what kind of techniques would you recommend? The stuff we saw with Chris and the breathing is like,
Yeah.
are these just universal tactics that everyone should be kind of implementing or
Yeah.
learning?
And you hit it on the nose when you said we don't always are we you wake up and you have no idea what stress is going to come your way. But if you practice and figure out what tools might work for you, then when that stress comes, you'll be better off for having practice. So because of how our bodies work and react to stress, naturally our systems will amp up so that our heart rate increases, the walls of our blood vessels can either expand or contract, whatever. And so as a result, it becomes really important to breathe. So I will definitely say that a universal tool that is helpful is breathing to counteract what your body is doing when you are stressed. Now, the other techniques, we have to realize that yes, they work for many people, but not for everybody, which is why I'm like, I'm not going to necessarily call it universal. I'm going to say that, yeah, it can be helpful when you do some mindfulness and you're present and aware of your stress in a non-judgmental way. That helps kind of get your mind a bit more clear and a bit more focused, less on the danger and less on the threat and more on kind of what you're experiencing. And then, positive self-talk is another thing that we engaged in the episode. When we face threatening or stressful situations, our body, our head tells us, like, this is stupid. Why are you doing this? You're going to die. You're ridiculous. So being able to override that by saying, oh, you're being courageous. You're up for a challenge. It's okay, whatever the outcome is, as long as you try it. So those are some examples of what I used with Chris that can be used in other situations, but there are many more techniques, and each person really needs to dig deep into what could be helpful for them.
Yeah, so no, the breathing is something I think I just do subconsciously, just kind of kicks in sometimes. And I'm glad you mentioned the positive self-talk, because I noticed a lot of times when you can see it on Chris's face, I mean, he's always this like cheery guy, but then when that situation hits, he kind of shuts down. But then you're
Yeah.
kind of always coaching him positive talk, and then when you see him like come back on the walk, he's also very positive. So what
Yeah.
kind of real-time change have you seen in your studies with different patients? It's like, hey, this makes a difference, or like this is when I should push someone, or and it's like to get that voice in their own head saying these positive things, because I'm the same way. It's like, where if I'm I'm stressed out, I'm gonna have the worst thoughts about myself. So how do you sort of just like combat that?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things I like to make sure people remember is the importance of just acknowledging their stress. We're kind of told like deny it, remove it, get rid of it. No, what works best is when people get good at diagnosing that they are stressed in the first place and acknowledging it. And so one of the things I have people do is think about, okay, when I'm stressed, what do I think? How do I behave? And what does my body do? For some people, it's breathing heavily and the body doesn't shut off. It won't sleep. They can't sleep. They're not digesting. Behaviorally, they might eat potato chips and candy and drink a lot of wine, or they might yell at their family. So part of what I tell people to do is first self-diagnose and then ask yourself, well, what do I need? What do I need right now? Do I need more time? Do I need to say no more? Do I need someone's help? Do I need to practice something? What do I need? And I feel like that is the first step in addressing our stress.
Yeah. And so, like, I think he even mentioned, because he was talking when you were talking about how how he grew up with his parents, and he always wanted to pay off their debts. And it's like, so his stress can it be a little? You notice, can it be more generational sometimes, like some childhood maybe trauma that you didn't even think about in the back of your head, and as you grow up, it like sort of shapes your actions and how you go about your life.
Look, I don't necessarily study the sources of trauma,
Hmm.
but what I have done is study myself, and my friends have studied themselves. And it's very true. Like, you absorb a lot from your environment. We all absorb a lot. And part of being present with our stress is understanding some of those traumas that shape why you react in a particular way. One of the examples that I often use is I am the child of immigrants. My parents moved to the US, a different land. None of their family was here, different language. They had to navigate everything. It was stressful. So I watched that. I absorbed that. And so what I've had to learn to do is to say, oh my gosh, don't worry about scarcity. You're going to be okay. Because my parents worried about scarcity. And even when things aren't scarce, you're going to naturally, unless you kind of are present with this, be like, oh my gosh, there's scarcity here. And so I've had to learn to teach myself, like, you're okay. Positive self-talk. There's nothing to be afraid of. This is okay. So all that to say, we have a lot of stuff that we've absorbed through our long lives, hopefully, that you need to unpack to really, really get to the source of why you get stressed over certain things relative to another.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, on some levels, sometimes it feels like the anticipation of something is almost more stressful than the actual activity. So
Yeah.
how do you sort of like get into the mindset? It's like, I don't know if you just get into the mindset of um prepare for the unexpected, or is it like what sort of have you learned about how the anticipation can sometimes just be worse than what the actually thing is, and how you prepare for that?
I'm so happy you said that, because stress is the experience or anticipation of
Mhm.
some type of kind of, and so one of the ways you do that, I often have people actually write down their typical cycle. Okay, so, and I ask them, think about something that you experience regularly that you always stress out about, and then map your cycle. So I'm just going to use an example of you as a reporter or a person in the press. You interview people all the time. But I'm sure there are times where you're really stressed before an interview. And so what can happen? Okay, so what do I want to change? I'm stressed before an interview. What do I do? I feel like I'm not prepared. Well, what happens when I feel like I'm not prepared? Then I speak negatively about myself and tell myself I can't do it. Then what do I do? Then I'm really behind and I procrastinate. And then, so like, you literally should map it out, because if you map it out, then you can figure out, okay, where can I potentially intervene now that I've mapped out this regularly occurring thing? It's your job. It's a critical feature of your job. And so when you figure out where you can intervene, then it makes each time that you're about to do that interview again or whatever a little bit better. I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, I've taught for decades. And I think I'm finally at the point where the first day of class, I'm not nervous at all. Because I've had to tell myself, I've done this for 10 years. I've done this over thousands of students. I can do that. Like, why am I stressed over the anticipation of this when it's something you get my point.
Yeah, absolutely. Right before in the waiting room, I had that same thing. But so then you're like, I think stress also has a big effect on your underlying health, and these are things that you don't necessarily see, so you don't think about often. So what kind of I don't know, when you just see those effects, like, and how do you sort of get out of that rut, maybe, where it's like you're not getting your exercise and you're getting the box of Oreos instead? And it's like, when are you seeing that? And it's like, what are like immediate steps you can take? Sort of, is breathing the first thing, or is like maybe like stepping away from whatever you're working on and just kind of clearing your head?
So one of the reasons why I study stress and why I think it's really important is that when our stress levels are chronically elevated and we're chronically in anticipation of it, then that has implications for our cardiovascular function, can lead to heart disease, blood pressure issue, digestion issues, cellular aging, cancer, like all of that. So that's why it's really important to kind of address it earlier on and be present with it. Now, with regard to what you do about it, the reason why it's important for people to understand what their behaviors and their emotions and their physiological responses are so that they can notice. The first step is you need to know, the moment you see yourself going for the brownie, you need to say, wait a minute, am I hungry or am I stressed? If the brownies are your thing. The moment you feel you're not sleeping, you need to ask yourself, okay, did I just eat something that's keeping me up or drink too much coffee? Or is there something underlying that I'm stressed about? And once you start noticing and acknowledging, and then you can welcome it more and kind of channel that stress.
Gotcha. And like, I don't know if it's a different sort of, or even if it's related, but like sort of adrenaline, when you're like, when you're in like a high, situation, maybe you had like an accident or something and you get like all this adrenaline. And then like my dad's a physician as well. It's like, and he, when there's a code or something, he like jumps into action and he's thinking so clearly. But it's like, and when you see that sometimes when you're like, we have like when I have something rarely, you perform better. But have you seen sort of a correlation between why are people able to perform so crystal clear when there's that much pressure on them versus when they're actually like thinking about something?
So here's the thing. Again, this stress that we have, our bodies were designed to deal with life-threatening things and to want to approach things that are in the appropriate way, that are threatening in some way. And it gives us like this laser-like focus. So a physician, their alarm system goes off like, oh my gosh, this person almost coded. They go into action, they're focused, and they can see it and feel it and change things and maybe help someone live. The problem with us is that we are having that, and they get the adrenaline and the energy to help them focus. What's happening to us is like, I don't know, some dumb thing happened that makes you have that same reaction. And instead you're attentive to the threat, the negative side of the thing, when it's really not life-threatening. And so this is where we need to figure out, okay, is this a real life-threatening thing that I need to deal with and recruit all resources towards that situation? Or do I need to say, whoa, my mind and body are telling me I'm stressed, but I don't need to be. That's the noticing and that's the acknowledging piece.
Gotcha. And so I'm tying into that. I don't know like how much you've heard of or looked into this, but sort of the clutch gene where we hear about all the time. These guys like Michael Jordan and Tom Brady are known to perform like at the top of the top of the top when they're in the most stressful situations. But is that really like, are they really under stress, or are they performing better under stress? Or is it just like that high degree of preparation that these like next level athletes have that gives them this unmatched sort of confidence?
Look, it's a combination. Okay, remember I said the things that make you stress: danger, uncertainty, effort. Well, what helps you overcome that in clutch moments? Knowledge and ability, your disposition, having external support. What Jordan and what Brady have is the knowledge and the ability. Jordan has practiced that shot thousands of times. So yes, he's stressed in the moment, but then your muscle memory comes in and you're laser-like focused on the threat of losing that can help you rise to the occasion. So the one thing I like to remind people of is that it's not stress in and of itself that's harmful or helpful. It's also your mind stress set about stress that influences whether you'll have this positive outcome, this making the shot or whatever. So we need to kind of rethink that and shift our perspective on stress to approach it in the way I just described versus it's always bad for you, I'm going to miss the shot.
Gotcha. Oh, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
It was so great to meet you. Thank you.
You too. All right. Take care.
You too.